ACB is now on the Supreme Court. Chuck Schumer vows revenge. Riots in Philadelphia last night over a police-involved shooting, and post-election violence preparations are already underway. Welcome, friends. 1 week. 1 week until the election, and here we are in this last stretch, wanting it to just come to a conclusion, and hopefully the right one for America, and that's where we see ourselves. But we have this brief respite, perhaps 12, maybe 24 hours, where we get to enjoy the good guys and gals getting a victory. Remember how about 3 weeks ago, I told you that it looked like it would be possible the president would have a great trifecta, a triple crown, if you will, of victories, beating COVID, getting ACB confirmed, and winning re-election all within a month. It would be pretty amazing if that ends up happening. We are 2 out of 3 right now, getting pretty close. Amy Coney Barrett, 52 votes in the Senate. And now she is the 9th Supreme Court Justice. She's eminently qualified, all the things you've already heard, right? She's brilliant, she's ethical, everyone respects her, she'll be fair-minded. She's exactly the kind of person you want on the Supreme Court. But because she's not a left-wing activist pretending that she'll be a fair-minded and impartial textualist, right? Because of all that, the left is throwing an absolute fit, which we knew they would. But the things they're saying don't even make sense, are untrue, are just kind of silly. And I know that we're going to have to dive back into the election state by state, this battle ahead for the next 6 days. But I want to take a little time today just to make sure we all understand what exactly the Democrat claims are around ACB, why they're complaining so much about this. Because it tells you a lot about the modern Democrat Party. It tells you a lot about where they are, what they really think, and how they're willing to conduct themselves, which I think the American people should really think long and hard about before casting any ballots in this election. All right, this is a party, the Democrats, that has been complaining about undermining institutions and norm busting for 4 years. This has been a constant refrain that Trump is actually a threat to our democracy. After calling him a racist and a fascist, that might be their third favorite epithet for Donald Trump. No truth to any of this, but they like to say it. It makes them feel better about Hillary's loss. It makes them feel like somehow they're always in the right, no matter how absurd their claims about this president and his supporters, no matter how much their prognostications about a Trump that couldn't handle the economy, that would lead to wars, all these terrible things. None of the predicted calamities that Democrats were so certain of, none of them happened during the Trump presidency. The only challenge that did hit Trump and hit him hard was something that hit the whole world, that nobody could have predicted, and that we are still trying to work through now. But all of the things, they weren't saying, oh, Trump's not going to be ready for a pandemic. They were saying that Trump wouldn't be able to handle the economy. A lie. The economy was booming. A better economy than Obama ever had in 8 years. Oh, I guess that's just circumstances, right? Just lucky. We want to talk about luck. I think we all understand that if there wasn't the COVID pandemic right now, Trump would be looking to a massive landslide. I mean, I think he really would win the biggest landslide since Ronald Reagan. And, unfortunately, he got dealt a tough hand here with COVID. The whole world has, and the United States along with it. But they hate this president. And one of the major claims is that he's unwilling to respect the norms of our government, even though, how do they usually challenge Trump? They take him to court. What's Trump's response to being taken to court? Having government lawyers make their case and then respecting the judgment of the judicial branch. That's what ends up happening. The process exactly as it is supposed to be done. And that's what we see here with the ACB elevation to the Supreme Court. It was the process exactly as it is supposed to be done. When they use words like illegitimate, they are changing the very definition. They're not giving you a real criticism of the process. They're just saying, I don't like. And they're trying to find fancier words because they don't want to sound like a bunch of spoiled brats who can't handle when they don't get their way. Well, the problem is that's what the Democrats have turned into as a party. They never have any stiff upper lip, never any sense of, okay, we lost this one fair and square. Let's make a better argument to the American people. It's always Russia. Trump cheated. This is illegitimate. This is not the way it's supposed. No, it is the way it's supposed to go. And that connection with reality that liberals are at least temporarily being forced to make is a good thing for them. Perhaps it will mature their party a little bit, although I think the much more likely outcome is that they're just going to dive even deeper into their sanctimonious insanity. That's what you think. That's what I think is going to happen. I think you probably believe it too. Chuck Schumer taking the lead on this for the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Schumer, a man who will say anything, anytime, as long as it benefits Chuck Schumer. Here he is on the ACB nomination. But let me also say, and Democrats, some of them made fools of themselves last night. I mean, Mazie Hirono got up there and said, hell no, and just made some kind of a scene during her vote. You know, Mazie Hirono, I love Hawaii as a state, and I really like the people of Hawaii, and I always enjoy it when I go there. But I'm angry at Hawaii still over Mazie Hirono. She is the dumbest person in the United States Congress, and it's obvious to everybody. Why is this person a United States senator? Does anybody have a good answer for that? Anyway, Chuck Schumer's not dumb. He's just not ethical. Here he is, play one.
Here, at this late hour, at the end of this sordid chapter in the history of the Senate, the history of the Supreme Court, my deepest and greatest sadness is for the American people. Generations yet unborn will suffer the consequences of this nomination.
Generations yet unborn, Chuck Schumer says. Yes, generations yet unborn will suffer the consequences, perhaps, of being born. That's right. There will be consequences that occur during their lives that they will be allowed to have, at least in some places, in some states, if Amy Coney Barrett does overturn the horrific, just from a legislative as well as moral position, Roe v. Wade decision. That's really what this is all about. They tried to make it about Obamacare, but the problem for the Democrats is that if they talked more about abortion and where their party is on this, it becomes hard for them to pretend they're moderates. The official Democrat Party position on the issue of abortion is anytime, at any time, for any reason, funded by you, against your wishes, and special protections because this is a constitutional right. Special legal protections, in addition to you can have one. They should make sure that you don't have any blocking of the pathway to a clinic, all these other things. This comes from Planned Parenthood v. Casey. That's their position. And it might not change, actually. And the Supreme Court may not overturn Roe v. Wade, even with Amy Coney Barrett there. You see, our side, speaking of norms and process, those who are constitutionalists accept that you're not getting a guaranteed outcome here. Look at John Roberts, although I don't think he's really a constitutionalist. I think he's a stealth lib. Look at Gorsuch, even on the recent gender and sexual identity case that came up. Right? Look at what happens on the right. They're not guaranteeing you anything. They're just guaranteeing a certain approach to the law, whereas Democrats are guaranteeing an outcome as judges. That's what they want. They want this to be decided before it even goes before the court. They want certain things to be ideologically guaranteed, and they worry they no longer have that guarantee. But for Schumer to talk of generations yet unborn suffering consequences, I have to think that he did that on purpose to signal to his base that he knows this is really about the abortion issue more than anything else with the Supreme Court. It legally indefensible. Roe v. Wade is completely absurd. I mean, Put aside the moral atrocity for a second. This is not something that a good faith lawyer could argue and think is really the law. But we've all been trained. We've all been forced to comply with this, to live in a country where this is now the regime, and it may change, and ACB may bring it about. What a consequential thing. President Trump now has 3 Supreme Court justices in his first term: Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett. And there were people that were mocking those on the right in 2016. Remember? Oh, but Gorsuch was some kind of a slight. This is what anti-Trump, quote, conservatives, who now are openly Democrats rooting for Joe Biden, of course. But this is what the early, never Trumpers were saying. Oh, yeah, you think it was worth it just to get that one judge? Well, actually, it was 3 Supreme Court justices and also a largely remade federal judiciary across the board, circuit courts, appeals courts, and the profound impact that will have on this country for decades to come. So if you only voted for Trump because of judges, if that was the only reason, you've invested in a stock that paid big time dividends. But of course, there are all these other things that we've seen the president do that make him worthy of reelection on top of it. And we'll certainly talk about more of those today. But that's right. Schumer is vowing revenge here. Democrats are scorned. It's like they've been broken up with, and they're saying, we're going to make you wish you'd never done this before. We're all worried. Gosh, what are they going to do now? Play clip 2.
As the globe gets warmer, as workers continue to fall behind, as unlimited dark money floods our politics, as reactionary state legislatures curtail a woman's right to choose, gerrymander districts, and limit the rights of minorities to vote, my deepest, greatest, and most abiding sadness tonight is for the American people and what this nomination will mean for their lives, their freedoms, their fundamental rights. Monday, October 26th, 2020, it will go down as one of the darkest days in the 231-year history of the United States Senate.
Oh, my gosh. Cry more, Schumer. Cry more, libs. You are reaping what you sowed here. This is on Harry Reid and the Democrats in the Senate and the Democrat Party stretching back for decades. This goes to the blocked nomination of Robert Bork, of the attempted blocked nomination, unsuccessfully, of course, of Justice Thomas. It was so fitting that Justice Thomas was the one who swore in ACB last night. Goes to the blocking of Miguel Estrada, Democrats blocking him. And then Harry Reid and the nuclear option. Sorry. They changed the rules. We're playing by the rules as they changed them. Too bad. This is politics. And yes, as Mitch McConnell said,
our Democratic colleagues keep repeating the word illegitimate, as if repetition would make it true. If you just say it often enough, does it make it true? I don't think so. We're a constitutional republic. Legitimacy does not flow from their feelings. Legitimacy is not the result of how they feel about it. You can't win them all, and elections have consequences. And what this administration and this Republican Senate has done is exercise the power that was given to us by the American people in a manner that is entirely within the rules of the Senate and the Constitution of the United States.
Mitch McConnell's right. Elections do have consequences. Let's remember that in just a week. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better hope this crime never happens to you because it can ruin you financially, and it goes after your most valuable asset, your home. Here's how it works. The bad guys, they are cyber thieves, and your home's title, guess what? It's up there in the cloud, stored on servers. It's in the cyber realm. They use your information. They get a quitclaim deed, kick you off your home's title, put themselves on, take out loans against your home. You often won't find out about this until you get the payment notices or perhaps even a foreclosure notice in the mail. You got to take action today with Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. It'll create a virtual barrier around your home's title. HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. You can also check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Take action today.
It is highly fitting that Justice Barrett fills the seat of a true pioneer for women. It's Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Tonight, Justice Barrett becomes not only the fifth woman to serve on our nation's highest court, but the very first mother of school-aged children to become a Supreme Court justice. Very important.
You see what a fraud feminism, as practiced by the left, is at times like this, don't you? Here you have a woman who is having it all. Incredibly successful, totally self-made, not reliant on a man, 7 children, great mom, stable, loving, relationship with her husband, and now elevated to the Supreme Court. And this should be a victory for all women, right? She's the ultimate working mom, isn't she? Well, but she's not a struggling single mom who is going to rely upon the state for help. So the Democrats don't care about this narrative. Oh, and even more importantly, she's not a leftist who believes the Constitution says whatever the left wants it to say at any point in time. So she doesn't count. It's almost like she's not a woman. Isn't that astonishing? The mother of 7 is somehow not representative of female empowerment. Did you see any kind of girl power stuff trending on social media last night? Were you seeing any of the usual characters in the media who talk about how important it is to have diversity? Well, she's a woman. Isn't gender diversity something that we should all celebrate? Isn't diversity of background when it comes to schooling? Finally, we have a Supreme Court justice who did not go to Harvard, Columbia, or Yale law schools. Went to Notre Dame. And why'd she go to Notre Dame? Because she's not rich. She's not connected. No one wrote a check to get her into school. Nobody waved her into an Ivy League institution because she's a preferred category, whether minority or legacy or whatever. No, she's just really, really smart, impressive, hardworking. And yet the left not only refuses to celebrate this, they're mourning it. I mean, they're openly telling us that this is something that makes them deeply upset. And they won't even say, well, it's great that a mother of 7 is on the Supreme Court. Because remember, the left has also been training women for a long time now to think family, not really important. Being in a stable, loving, monogamous marriage, that doesn't matter. You just do it all for the Instagram posts and make sure that, you can get the biggest corporate job you can. Step over all the bodies you have to. Do whatever you got to do. Be just like the most sociopathic man in corporate America. That's the real model for women. This is what they're telling ladies all across the country. I see it. I'm here in New York City. I know women like that in my peer group. I've grown up with them. Doesn't make them happy. I know we're not supposed to say it. Doesn't make them happy, though. You know who I think is happy? Amy Coney Barrett. And not because she's a Supreme Court justice. That's the icing on the cake. I think she's happy because she feels like she has a purposeful, stable, loving life, day-to-day existence, family. All that stuff matters. But apparently you can have it all, but you got to build one along with the other.
This separation of duty from political preference is what makes the judiciary distinct among the 3 branches of government. A judge declares independence not only from Congress and the president, but also from the private beliefs that might otherwise move her. The judicial oath captures the essence of the judicial duty. The rule of law must always control. My fellow Americans, even though we judges don't face elections, we still work for you. It is your Constitution that establishes the rule of law and the judicial independence that is so central to it. The oath that I have solemnly taken tonight means at its core that I will do my job without any fear or favor, and that I will do so independently of both the political branches and of my own preferences. I love the Constitution and the democratic republic that it establishes, and I will devote myself to preserving it.
All of this sound thinking, virtue, wisdom, decency, jurisprudence that's worthy of the name, all of it is somehow offensive to the Democrats right now. In fact, even when Trump, for example, praises Ruth Bader Ginsburg in memoriam, saying, well, ACB is taking on the seat of a great pioneer, you can tell they get offended by that. Like, he shouldn't be able to even say the initials RBG. And, oh, they hate it so much when all of us say ACB. The left has already told us that, which is why I really make a point of saying ACB all the time. But you'll notice the way that they approach all of this, it's almost like decency, constitutional interpretation that's not politicized, that's not the judge is essentially telling the public, a judge like Amy Coney Barrett, telling them, I'm going to apply the law as written, and I'm going to be a faithful arbiter of what the constitutional and legislative intent is of any given statute. I'm not going to just give people what I think they should have. For liberals, that's like garlic smeared on the face of a vampire. I mean, they hate this. They're like, what do you mean you're not going to give us what we want? They've gotten used to this. Decades and decades of on the biggest issues, 9 out of 10 times, big social issues in particular, Democrats get their way. On Obamacare, the plain language of, well, the plain meaning of plain language was abused so that they could save it the first time around. A tax is a penalty is a tax. And they contort themselves because who wants to be the judge who's held responsible for taking away pre-existing conditions? Who knew that all those years that I lived in this country without Obamacare, I was just unaware of the millions of people without any access to medical care who were just dying on the streets all the time that Obamacare saved? Really? That's a thing? Interesting. That's the way that it's positioned. But they hate all of this. They hate also the decency and humility and kindness that ACB exudes. Remember, they were pointing to all of these polls before her confirmation because the media called a 5-alarm fire. Oh, my gosh, Trump's going to fill another Supreme Court seat. So they created this frenzy around it. And then when everyone saw who Trump had appointed, when these hearings happened, we saw this person who's just legally several tiers above. I mean, as a legal mind, she is in a whole other echelon from the Senate Democrats who are desperately trying to trip her up. And she wasn't smug and she wasn't, condescending or rude about it. She just is better than them at this, knows more than them. And that came across, but also has a fundamental kindness and decency. And has, look, I'm just going to say it, a maternal warmth. You know, she seems like a mom. She seems like the person who, your kids, if they were going to go play with their friends, and she's the mom that you would want to be watching them and, making them some beef stew or something after a cold day playing in the backyard. That's who Amy Coney Barrett is. She also happens to be legally brilliant. This is all offensive to liberals. They can't handle it. They can't handle it. They hate all of it. Like I said, what's that all about? Right? Maybe if just the sight of the crucifix causes your skin to melt off, the problem is you. Maybe somebody who's so decent, so qualified, and such an asset to the United States, to our system, not being celebrated tells us much more about the people refusing to do the celebration. In fact, the condemnation, that's what they are doing. And that's why we saw right away the switch from, you can't do this. You're breaking norms, which is not true. You can't do this. This is illegitimate. Not true, right? There are some things that are true and some things are not. We can go through this. Their claims about this as being in any way illicit, illegitimate, prohibited by any rules anywhere is a lie. But then they switch from that to, okay, well, now we're just going to break all the rules. This is one of the most classic Democrat whiplash moments I've ever seen. Nancy Pelosi gets right to it. She's very upset. She's waking up. She's got a hangover. That Sauv Blanc she had last night was just delicious, but it's tiring. Here she is telling everybody what she thinks should happen. Play 4.
Well, I think that Joe Biden has given us a good path. He's going to have something that people can understand why this is important. And I like what something that Brian said about not just the Supreme Court, but the other courts. It was in 1876, there were 9 justices on the court. Our population has grown enormously since then. Should we expand the court? Well, let's take a look and see.
Right.
But and that relates to the 9 district courts. Maybe we need more district courts as well. And one other thing we need for these justices to disclose their holdings. Why should all the rest of us have to disclose our holdings? And that is appropriate, but not if you're a justice of the Supreme Court. They're in this ivory tower.
Pack the courts. He's just saying it straight up. She wants you to know this is going to be the plan. Notice the timeline here. If you take a chronological overview of what the Democrats have done, they politicized the court, and then they realized that since they'd done that, and they were getting away with it, they wanted to keep it that way. So then they started blocking judges they didn't like, and then they got rid of blocks on judges they did like, and they were warned at the time, including by Mitch McConnell, explicitly, okay, but now you're going to have to deal with us getting through judges that we like and you don't, and they didn't care. I mean, they're like a child who's been caught lying about doing his homework. And now, instead of accepting that they should just do their homework, they should just accept reality and responsibility, they're going into school and they're just trying to steal somebody else's again. They're trying to find some other way around this. There should be a principle here. There should be a grounding in what the rules of the road are. Why is this okay for Democrats? They should ask that question. Why would court packing be acceptable? Well, they think it's because they shouldn't have to live in a country where they don't get what they want from the courts. Where on decisions where some Americans want one thing and other Americans want another, it's not the law as written, as passed by the legislatures, and then, of course, with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as the framework for all of this, as the foundation for it, really, and weighing these different legal interests. It's just one side should get what it wants, the other should suffer in silence. And that's what we've seen for the courts, or at least the Supreme Court, for a long time. They don't have to deal with that in their minds, but we should. I mean, think about the lack of logic here, the lack of adult thinking. They're going to change the whole system because all of a sudden the system doesn't work to their advantage. But I thought that the system should be in place in such a way that it's not about advantage. Right? That the legislative branch of government is supposed to be what makes determinations about, within the framework of the Constitution, within the framework of the Bill of Rights, what we do, what our government does in this country. So on their, what should the tax rate be? Legislative question, right? Well, you look at all these different issues. What should be illegal? Legislative question. Right? This is what, what crimes, what criminal statutes should be passed. But the Democrats like to have this stopgap of, or rather this fallback of having some super legislature that they feel like will always, at the end of the day, cave to the pressure of the mob and give them what they want. And they just assume that our side is going to just keep taking that forever. Why? Why would we do that? They haven't really even thought this one through, because the Democrat Party has become the party of the mob. It's the mob mentality made into a political union. Right? It's just what does the frenzied collective demand? What do the emotions of the masses, irrespective of law, precedent, history, natural law, you name it, what do the masses demand right now? And Democrats try to deliver that, which is why you're seeing what was AOC, time to pack the courts. There are others as well. Others as well. The more radical Democrats just say out loud what we know the rest of them feel. Here's Ilhan Omar, place 7.
I mean, this is really an illegitimate process, truly, that has exposed the hypocrisy of Republicans as they've rushed through this process and have foregone many of the traditions that they have set themselves. And it's leaving so many Americans really worried about what this would mean for them, what it would mean for women in regards to reproductive rights, what it would mean for immigrants like myself when it comes to our religious liberty, what it would mean for our brothers and sisters in the queer community or the trans folks in our community when it comes to their rights to equality. We also know that there are so many people who are worried because they have pre-existing conditions. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
There's so much that she says that's nonsense, but let's just pick 2 of them, shall we? One, don't say reproductive rights. Just say what you're talking about, abortion. Can we just use the word? That's what the procedure is. That's what this is all about. There's no other reproductive right they're talking about. And also, the process was too fast. Why? Was Amy Coney Barrett not vetted enough with those endless, boring Senate hearings? Yeah. Garbage.
As Judge Barrett described so-called originalism, it means she's supposed to interpret the Constitution's text and understand it to have the meaning it had when the Constitution was ratified. But interpreting the Constitution in that manner has been used over and over to deny rights to women, to communities of color, and to the LGBTQ individuals, members of our society who had no rights when the Constitution was ratified. Originalism is racist. Originalism is sexist. Originalism is homophobic. For originalists like Judge Barrett, LGBT stands for let's go back in time, a time when you couldn't marry who you love, when you couldn't serve in the military if you were trans, a time when rights were not extended to gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, or intersex individuals. Originalism is just a fancy word for discrimination.
Okay, little speech there from Senator Ed Markey. Let's just stop. Well, let's take it for a moment here. If you don't have originalism, what do you have? You just have judges making stuff up. That's what you have. If it's not, what do the words say, and what was the intent of the legislature when it passed this law? What do you have? Right? What they keep talking about is expanding on interpretations of the Bill of Rights, let's say. Like, well, what does the Equal Protection Clause actually mean? Okay, fine. That's what judges do. They look at. But originalism just means, well, I'm not going to view a legal document, or I'm not going to view a law, a statute, as having words that are irrelevant to me because I want something else to be the case in this country. So I'm just going to say, well, this is what it says. Anti-originalism is a recipe for legal anarchy. It's actually a recipe for tyranny more than anarchy, now that it comes out of my mouth. But same idea. They make it up as they go along. Right? So we don't know what the laws really are. We don't know what the laws say until a judge tells us what they say. That's true all the time. What does that even include? Roe v. Wade's a perfect example. It's in the penumbras. You've got a special right. Okay, well, the right to bear arms. Yeah, no, I do have. I got a judge that's going to say I do have the right to a nuclear weapon in my home because I got the right to bear arms, and arms includes nuclear weapons. Arms control treaty, boom, done. Right? That's the opposite of originalism. Not looking at context and legal interpretation based upon what's actually passed. It's just, what do I want? I want to be able to have I want to be able to have intercontinental ballistic missiles in my living room. So, I'm just going to say that I'm going to make sure there's a judge that'll give that to me. Okay. All of a sudden, when liberals don't like the outcome, then they become originalists. See, they don't understand what a principle is. They don't understand. They really just, it's whatever they want. It's emotion over reason. That's the fundamental problem here is the left refuses to accept that there are some things that are true, even if they don't want them to be true. Like Amy Coney Barrett is now in the Supreme Court.